What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the college football Pac-12 betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, is Colin Wilson. 12 Pac-12 teams to get to. It's very nice. It's actually numerically accurate, but won't be for long. Colin, you ready to talk some Neon Dion and USC potential regression?
It's my favorite conference of all the Power Five. It's not even close. There's so much offense. There's so many characters at head coach. There's so many moving parts. You and I can't even cut a podcast without Colorado making a grand exit, or the Brett's reporting on us. And I don't know where they're going to be on TV, what channel, or where I'm going to be streaming this damn conference. But man, the quality of play is going to be so fantastic on offense out of this conference.
Yeah, I'm extremely excited for the Pac-12 this year. Can't say that about every year, but I think this is the strongest the league has been in a while. 6 teams finished in the top 20 last year. Just like the ACC betting preview that we just cut, no more divisions in the Pac-12, which I love. So that impacts how we are going to crack the code on figuring out who will play in the Pac-12 championship. Some little lay of the land. There are 3 new head coaches, Arizona State, Stanford, and Colorado. 6 new offensive coordinators, 5 new defensive coordinators, 6 potential new quarterbacks. That's half the teams. 4 teams have the same head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and quarterback. That's Washington, USC, Utah, and Arizona. 3 teams are brand new, wipe the slate clean, new head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and quarterback. That's Arizona State, Stanford, and Colorado. Yeah, the biggest question when it comes to the Pac-12, as always, can they avoid cannibalization and finally get a team into the college football playoff once again? Utah's actually looking for a three-peat in the Pac-12, which would be the first team to do so since Oregon did it in between 2009 and 2011. It's worth noting that some teams have 5 Pac-12 home games. Some teams have 4. The teams with 5 conference home games are USC, Utah, Oregon, Arizona State, Stanford, and Washington. Your other teams only have 4: Cal, Arizona, Colorado, Washington State, UCLA, and Oregon State. You'll notice that most of the top teams in the conference have 5 home games. I personally think that the schedule losers were Cal and Arizona. The schedule winners, probably Oregon State, which we'll get to. And then there's 5, I think right now, currently, some are closer than others, quarterback battles, which we'll touch on. Oregon State, UCLA, Cal, Arizona State, and Stanford, pretty high percentage of teams with quarterback battles. Your other quarterbacks, very strong. Like, it's a strong quarterback conference this year with, DeLora, obviously Caleb Williams, probably number 1 in the draft. Bo Nix season in full effect. Forgot we have him we'll be talking about. Cam Rising and his injury status. We have Sanders at Colorado. Cam Ward, your boy, is back. Michael Penix. I mean, some really strong quarterbacks and then some quarterback battles. We'll get to all of that, starting with the top of the league. And let's start with USC. Win total over 10, -110, plus 200 to win the Pac-12 at BetMGM, the official sponsor of Big Bets on Campus podcast. We know that we hated USC last year. They drove us nuts with a plus 22 turnover margin. Certainly some regression coming in that aspect, but the offense should once again be absolutely electric, led by Caleb Williams, although they bring in Cliff Kingsbury to the staff, who, if you listen to our NFL podcast, we are not fans of. So, I mean, do we fade USC just because Kingsbury is there? I can tell you that this team should start 6-0. San Jose State, Nevada, Stanford at home, then Arizona State, Colorado on the road, then Arizona at home. Should start 6-0. We'll see if Alex Grinch's defense can improve. We'll see if some potential transfers, maybe 3 on the offensive line, can fill in for some of the losses there. Because then, if they do get things right, they're going to need to, because the back half of the schedule is brutal. At Notre Dame, then Utah at home, should be a much healthier Utah. At Cal, tricky spot, although Cal stinks. Washington at home, at Oregon, and then UCLA at home, which isn't really a home game when you're playing UCLA. Biggest questions here for USC. Will the offensive line come together? A Lost some really talented guys there. Can the D improve at all? How bad will the regression hit? And will Cliff Kingsbury poison the locker room? What are your thoughts on USC, Colin?
It took a lot to get this team where they were last year. A lot of turnovers, a lot of unbelievable. I mean, we're talking passes and tip balls that went straight into the hands of defenders. And, you know, I had under 9.5 on these guys last year. And you can't say anything bad again about the offense. The offense is a well-oiled machine with Caleb Williams. You know, they have one of the best running backs. He was a backup last year, Austin Jones. You know, they have a guard, Jared Kingston, offensive tackle, Jonah Monheim. They are
also brought in some good transfers. They got some 5-stars in there. The offense will be ridiculous again.
They remind me of LSU. They're loaded everywhere at every position. And then you look on the defensive side of the ball, they went out and got Mason Cobb. Mason Cobb told me in media days, go ahead if you're running your tickets, cash your tickets. Yeah. Mason Cobb was at media days sitting next to Caleb Williams and said, listen, I wanted to leave Oklahoma State and I wanted to get best prepared for the NFL, and USC was it. So, you know, him, Bear Alexander are going to make this a formidable defense. So it's hard to fade USC when they actually have defensive pieces coming in to take over for a rank that was 127th in defensive success rate, 121st in defensive finishing drives. Alex Grinch has got to improve those aspects of the USC defense. It's got some pretty good players there underneath it. Still, at the same time, with all of that said, you know, 3rd in portal rankings, 8th in national recruiting. I only have these guys just shade over 9 wins. I don't have them even at 9.5 where you can get heavy juice going to the under. You know, there was a lot of things, a lot of indicators here that say that they can't repeat what they did last year. And most of it was tied to second order win total, turnover regression. You know, only 68% of the defense when you look at experienced snaps coming back. There is a massive improvement in the amount of offenses, the potency of the offenses they're going to be taking on. And then, you know, this schedule is not easy. At Oregon is not an easy, you know, I mean, what's that total going to be? 77 in the new world with the clock changes. UCLA is not a gimme at the end of the year. At Notre Dame in the middle of your conference schedule before you go to Utah. I'm sorry, before you host Utah. It's not an easy schedule whatsoever. And taking that all in, there's going to be some coin flip games on the schedule. And that's how I got to 9 wins. And so I would say the play is an under, and it's a very uncomfortable under because of how explosive these guys are.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that the road league slate is favorable outside of at Oregon, but you're at Cal. You know, you only have 4 road games. You're at Cal, you're at Colorado, at Arizona State. But you do have to go to Notre Dame. And then you have UCLA at home, which is kind of like a neutral game. Washington, Utah at home. It's also worth noting that Utah and, you know, and at Arizona State, that could be a tricky game. Their first road game, weird things happen down there. But I do think that they'll start 6-0. I'm personally I'm under 10, but really close there. So there's nothing for me. But we might not learn a lot about the defense. I mean, because look, San Jose State, Nevada, Stanford, at Arizona State, at Colorado to start. We might not learn a lot until maybe at Notre Dame. The other thing is they play Utah late. And
Is Notre Dame gonna?
Yeah, I don't even know Notre Dame. Well, Sam Hartman he can put up some numbers against USC, regardless of who he's throwing to. But yeah, they get Utah later in the year too. And Utah, who we're going to talk about soon, has some injury questions at some key positions early on. So they'll be healthier later in the year. But I don't hate the undercall, especially because Cliff Kingsbury is there. But let's move on to, let's go to Utah. I think that they're an interesting team. I think the way that we'll split this up is you kind of have 6 teams that are potential contenders in my eyes. And that's USC, Oregon, Washington, Utah, Oregon State, and UCLA. Those are all the teams that are at BetMGM right now, 15-1 or better odds-wise to win the league. And then you have Washington State, Cal, Arizona State, Colorado, and Stanford, who are all 30-1 or lower. So we'll kind of start just like we did with the ACC. But this is all just, all right, who can we make a case for? I don't see any value in USC at plus 200. You like the under 10. Don't mind that at all. Let's talk Utah. Really interesting team. They're over 8.5 plus 115. 5-1 to win the conference. They're going for a three-peat, as I mentioned earlier, at BetMGM. Should be really strong in the trenches. Do lose a really good cornerback in Clark Phillips, but the defense should be loaded, starting with that defensive line. It brings back 7 of the top 8. Add a linebacker from Stanford who also should help. I also like the addition, which will go under the radar, of their kicker, which is going to help their kicking game, which was pretty messy last year. The offensive line is also really deep. Their tight ends are going to be great as always. Even though they lost Kincaid, the tight end room is still strong. Running back room is strong. I do have some questions about wide receiver, but I think this all comes down to the quarterback. And you also have Guthrie, their star tight end, has some injury questions, but it looks like he's going to be ready to go by week 1. Cam Rising's health is very important, and the reason, he obviously is recovering from a serious injury, and I believe that Kyle Whittingham said as early as, I think, in the last day or two, he's like, it's going to come down to the wire. Why is that important? And I think the line ticked down a little bit today. Because they play Florida, they host Florida at home in week 1, and they're at Baylor. So it's not like you have a couple weeks like some of these teams where you're playing no one early on. Having Cam Rising available or not for Florida and at Baylor, and even if it stretches into, you get Weber State, but then you have UCLA and at Oregon State, they got a really tough early schedule. So if I'm going to bet anything, I'm going to bet under on Utah, just for the chance that Cam Rising isn't fully healthy either all season or especially early on, because their schedule is tough. The teams that they don't play out of the Pac-12 are Washington State and Stanford. That's not great. They go to USC, they go to Washington, to Oregon State with that brutal non-conference schedule. But a lot of this is going to come down to Rising's health. Utah's going to be tough to play at home. Their trenches are going to be great. The defense is going to be solid as always. But with Rising's injury status, could be a rougher year than we're used to seeing from Utah, who usually overperforms. What are your thoughts on your beloved Utes?
So I think for the conference as a whole, the way that you handicap the Pac-12 is you look at who has the best defensive front sevens. Those defensive front sevens are going to be able to shut down all this quarterback love that you're going to hear on this podcast. There's only 4 teams in this conference that are going to field a quality defensive front seven that's going to be able to get stops, keep the chains from moving, force punts. USC was one, and we just talked about them. The second one is Utah. Utah is expected to have the best defensive front seven in this conference, led by interior tackle Junior Tafuna. I don't expect any drop off from the defense. Stuggy's right. I mean, this is all about Cam Rising. And to go a little bit further, Whittingham comes out of Pac-12 media days, immediately lets it go that this is going to come down to the wire. So what do? I go immediately talk to Cam Rising. Have you done anything? Have you lifted a weight? Have you walked up and down the sidewalk? He's done nothing. And, he has been told to lay off this, lay off that, no any exercise whatsoever. I think there's been a lot of video game playing, a lot of waiting to get the clearance to even try any kind of activity. Once that was said, some other unnamed coaches decided to tell me that by now he would at least be doing something with team activities inside the facility, and he's doing nothing. So you could see the line against Florida tick down. There is a very educated guess from some of the people at Pac-12 Media Days that Cam Rising is not going to play at all. Considering Kyle Whittingham's penchant for wanting to win the Pac-12, what's the purpose of putting him out there against Florida, Baylor, or Weber State, which is a really good FCS program? So I think you would be right in playing the win total under, but at the same time, are we going to have fresh legs for Cam Rising when he plays UCLA on September 23rd? Does that keep him fresh for the rest of the schedule? Probably so. This is the best defensive front seven. I do like them, but you're not winning games without Cam Rising. Especially when your main weapon is your tight end. And so for that reason, and Utah's a heavy tight end, there is a plus 280 out there for Utah to make the championship game. I'm not saying win the whole conference. I'm not saying you're going to three-peat, but to make the championship game allows me to take out that Cam Rising front end of the schedule in the non-conference and allows me to pivot off you in a schedule that concludes with Arizona and Colorado. So I like Utah plus 280 to get into the Pac-12 championship game.
Colin finds a way to back his beloved Utes in the futures market while also saying that the under is not a bad look at the win total. So I was wondering how you were going to come all the way back full circle and back your Utes, but there you go. Plus 280. Yeah, they should have a top 10 defense. Offensive line is super deep. But it'll come down to Cam Rising. But you're right. He should, based on the timeline, he should be good to go by the time that league play rolls around. There is also a bye week in week 6, which could also really help. Let's go to another team in that upper echelon, and let's talk some Bo Nix season in full effect. Oregon, over 9.5 plus 105 win total, plus 300, the second favorite to win the Pac-12 at BetMGM. Bo Nix is back. However, Kenny Dillingham is out. Will Stein is in from UTSA. We know Bo Nix with Kenny Dillingham is a god. Without him is not. And Kenny Dillingham, who we'll talk about in a bit, after a very successful year with that Oregon offense, has moved on to stayed in the conference, gone to Arizona State as their new head coach. The D really struggled last year. They couldn't generate any pressure. They only had 18 sacks. They really count. There's a lot of talent on the back end, even though, you lost. Look at some of the talent that they had on that team that they lost. It's amazing how much they struggled. Look, you lose a cornerback to the first round. You lose your free safety, who's a leading tackler. You lose Sewell at linebacker, your best pass rusher, a really good defensive tackle. But the defense really struggled, especially against the pass. The question is, can Dan Lanning in year 2 improve that defense? Brought in a new defensive coordinator who we like, which should help just, I think, communication and on the back end. What do you see from this Oregon team? Bo Nix back, year 2 of Dan Lanning, but Dillingham gone. A lot of Ducks left via the portal into the NFL draft, but they also brought in a lot of talent. It's a lot of moving parts here. What do you see here for a team that, the teams that they don't get on the Pac-12 schedule are Arizona and UCLA? Mixed bag league schedule. They're at Washington. They are at Utah. They host USC and Oregon State. I think the biggest questions are, okay, the new offensive coordinator, new offensive line as well. And then how do these transfers in year 2 of Lanning translate to potentially a more efficient defense? What do you see with the Ducks here?
Well, it makes sense why Dan Lanning went out and got Will Stein, and everything that I could collect says that this offense is not going to change what Kenny Dillingham was going to do. So, I even got really into like tempo with this team, because the Bo Nix, Kenny Dillingham Ducks last year were about 52nd in tempo. Will Stein was a top 25 at UTSA when he was on that staff. So we're going to see a lot of the same stuff, a lot of 11-12, 31% RPO, some play action, inside zone counter. I don't expect a drop off from the offense whatsoever. Can the offensive line keep Bo Nix from having a high ankle sprain or getting hurt to where you and I are scrambling on Saturdays trying to figure out what his status is? That's the question that really relies on.
Is Braxton Burmeister back? Did he transfer back to Oregon? Are we going to have to find out if he's playing?
Well, Ty Thompson is still there. But yeah, Braxton Burmeister is on his 8th year of eligibility. So the defense is where I really get a little bit shaky. I mentioned with Utah, there's only 4 defenses in this conference that has a defense good enough to make stop the chains. Oregon is not one of them. They have a lot of turnover going on there. And Tosh Lapoy is still on that staff, not able to get it together. 105th in defensive success rate last year, 110th in defensive finishing drives. You do get an outstanding edge position at Brandon Dorless, but it seems like we're in this same conversation, whether it's Kayvon Thibodeau or it's Dorless. We have outstanding edge pass rushers, and we can't stop runs up the gut. And that's going to be a problem in the conference this season. So I am not taking Oregon futures to win the conference or even to get into the game. And when you look at the schedule, road games at Texas Tech, Washington, Utah. You've got to defend Autzen against USC. I know my projection's at 9.8. If I haven't bet it, I'd have no money pushed across the counter. But if I was, I would take it under 9.5. Defending against USC at home is one thing, but going on the road with a little bit of wrinkles in your offensive system, you were like number one in the nation in available yards. You were number one in quality drive with Kenny Dillingham. There's just a lot that could get changed and some wrinkles on the offense that could, like, what if you set Oregon back to like the 10th best team in quality drives? Doesn't that knock a little bit of their efficiency off? So I would be a little bit worried about that. And the schedule's not that easy. So I'm gonna say under on Oregon.
Don't mind the under, even though arguably on paper, extremely talented team, and you would expect some improvement from Lanning in year 2, but I do have more questions than I think the market does on Oregon and Bo Nix season, but it should be another exciting year of betting Ducks games. Let's stay up in that region of the United States and talk the Washington Huskies' remarkable turnaround under new head coach Kalen DeBoer last year. Washington this year, plus 375 to win the Pac-12, one of the favorites. Win total over 9.5 plus 115. Michael Penix is back. An absolutely amazing year under center, similar to Bo Nix. When he has DeBoer, good things happen, and he does once again this year. The offense improved from just over 21 points per game to just under 40 last year. Now, the schedule does get a little bit harder, a little bit more difficult. The non-conference is more difficult, and they add Utah and USC, who they didn't have to worry about last year. The offense should be awesome once again. I mentioned Penix, arguably the best wide receiver room in the country with a lot of depth now. Their running back room, you got Cam Davis, then you add Nada from Arizona State and Johnson from Mississippi State, loaded there. Interior offensive line, some questions, but I think they'll be just fine. The biggest questions are on defense. But I actually like where the defense is headed. They're going to be really good off the edge. I like their linebackers. The biggest question is in the secondary. You lose 2 of 3 corners, but you do return both safeties. I like how they're going to move some of the guys around. You had Muhammad from Oklahoma State, and there was a big transition schematically from what they were doing under Jimmy Lake to what they wanted to do last year. And you saw some of the improvement down the stretch for this Washington defense, which was horrendous early in the season. You do lose Bright at linebacker, but you get a healthy Olafishio potentially, or I would assume so. And then you add a linebacker who's pretty good from USC. So I think the defense, which is going to be better, and this offense is going to be right there. And DeBoer is just one of those coaches I trust. So I don't show a ton of value, but it's over or nothing here for me with Washington. It should be right in the mix once again. What do you see here with the Huskies?
This is tough because I love Washington as much as any other team in this conference this year. This is a team that was number 1 in offensive havoc allowed. They do not make mistakes. They do not let defenses play in the backfield. They do not beat themselves at any aspect of the game on offense. They return 92% of a machine that just produced available yards and scores everywhere. They were second in the nation offensive finishing drives. Anytime they got past the 40, there were 6 points going up on the board. I don't see anything about that stopping. 76% of the offensive line snaps return. Kalen DeBoer is 90-11 straight up as a head coach. I mean, this guy just wins. And Michael Penix, that's all he does.
He covers too.
So I don't expect any drop off on the offense. Now, I mentioned that there's 4 teams that can play defense and defensive front 7. Washington is one of those. Not as highly projected on defense as USC and Utah and Chuck Morrill's year 2 of his scheme, but they are good enough to get some stops. I expect a lot of shootouts with, the upper echelon of the Pac-12. So, Stuck, I think you're right. Like the win total is priced so high, it's hard to say over. The Pac-12 championship game number is so low that there's not a lot of value in it when you got a lot of big games. So when I found value was the game of the year against USC. I actually project that as the Trojans being a small favorite, less than 3. And the number out, and it's just going to be a game just full of rocket fuel, fireworks, unbelievable, right? I expect shots to
Total of 80.
Yeah. But the game of the year out there is Washington +6. I'm taking that. I'm scooping that. I'm taking that all day. Give me the Huskies +6 in a game that if you want to bet,
Best team with the ball wins.
Yeah. Yeah. If you like Washington to do anything this year, they have to have that game. So I'll take Washington +6. At Stanford the week before, come on, they get a bye week.
Yeah. Fair enough. Let's move on to 2 teams that we think might potentially have value from a semi-long shot perspective. We'll start with Oregon State. Find them 10, 11 to 1. Win total over 8.5 plus 115. Is this a DJU podcast? He does return to the West Coast behind an elite offensive line and which should be an elite run game. This could be like a very diverse run game with heavy play action with Martinez and that great offensive line. The defense, I'm a big, Trent Bray guy who's great in his first year. They do have to find some new pieces at linebacker, and they have to replace both starting cornerbacks, but I'm higher on the defense than the market, and I don't have as many questions as some. I like Julian returning from injury at safety as well. You had a linebacker from Wyoming who I think will help. I do really, their safety tandem might be really special, but cornerback and inside linebacker there's certainly questions there, but why do I like Oregon State as a potential long shot from a futures perspective? Well, this is a team that's on the rise. I love their staff. They finished ranked number 17 highest since 2000 last year. But number one, they're priced in the 10 to 11 to 1 range, which is enough for me to, gets me out of bed. But their biggest question last year, and like what kind of held them back, was quarterback play. And they bring DJU over from Clemson. I was not a big DJU guy, mainly just because of that Clemson offense. And he has some things he has to work out, but the talent is there. The offensive line is there. The run game is there. A new scene, a better scheme. Like, if the upside there is enormous, right? If it hits, it could go way wrong. And then you could have, Gulberson back in there, or a freshman. But that's what I'm looking for in a future is, okay, if DJU hits and the upside, and he actually realizes the upside with this new, with a great offensive line, new scheme, new scene, less pressure, right, on the West Coast, then this is a team that will have ample opportunities to get to the Pac-12 championship game because they won the scheduled lottery, in my opinion. Number one, they avoid USC. They also avoid Arizona State for what it's worth. They get the 2 worst teams in the Pac-12 in Colorado and Stanford. And they get Utah, UCLA, and Washington all at home. So if DJU hits, then, there might be some growing pains early. You're going to face San Jose State, UC Davis, and San Diego State early on before you go to Washington State, get Utah at home, at Cal. Really, I think there's a chance to build some momentum here, but that's what I'm buying. I'm buying the upside of DJU, the schedule lottery, and Jonathan Smith to continue this momentum that he's building in Corvallis. So, from a future perspective, I think Oregon State's worth a shot at double digits, 10, 11 to 1 or better. Thoughts on that? And then go into your spiel on why UCLA might be worth a look at even a better price of, I think, currently 14 to 1 at BetMGM.
Oregon State is going to be a serious problem for a lot of teams in this conference. There are only 3 rush defenses on this schedule that can try to put a stop to this. That's Utah, UCLA, and Washington. I don't think the other 9 teams on Oregon State's schedule have a chance. They are going to run the ball down people's throats. They are going to hog clock And I mean, this is what Jonathan Smith does: 33-22 against the spread as a head coach, and they get 79% of their offense back. And we mentioned Damian Martinez and Deshaun Fenwick are going to be running inside-outside zone with DJU, who I believe is averaging more than 3 yards after contact at Clemson when they would do the same inside zone with him. DJU podcast, I don't know. We could probably cool it off on that. But from a running perspective, this is a serious problem for these Pac-12 defenses.
Who are the 3 teams you said could slow it?
The only 3 teams on this entire schedule that have a defensive front 7 that can try to stop DJ and Fenwick and Damian Martinez is Utah, UCLA, and Washington. That's the only.
Where are those 3 games played?
They're gonna host
all in Corvallis. All in Corvallis. And expanded Corvallis now. Expanded stadium in Corvallis now.
Yeah. And by the way, Jonathan Smith has had 13 home games in Reser Stadium the last 2 years. You know how many of those he covered? All 13. They're impossible to beat at home, unless you're USC and you get 6 turnovers. But so the whole thing with Oregon State is, do I want to partake in this win total, or do I want to pick a team out from their schedule where they're going to be an underdog, but they have a serious advantage in the run game? And there is one game on the schedule, and that team is Oregon in the Civil War. So I'm taking Oregon State game of the year line plus 7.5 against an Oregon front 7 that is not going to be able to stop it. And listen, everything I took away from the coaches and speaking with the coaches, Jonathan Smith could not be happier that they're trying to find ways to shave clock and make it shorter games. You think Army has slow games with only 7 to 8 possessions? What do you think Oregon State is trying to do? They're going to run the ball, kill the clock, pound it, and keep the other team from having possessions. That's the best way to keep USC from scoring and keep Washington from scoring. Don't let them have the ball. Oregon State is a serious issue. Do I think they can win the conference? No. The defense will take a step back, only 30% coming back. And listen, I'm with you. I love Trent Bray too. They were 17th in defensive finishing drives. There is a direct correlation between finishing drives and covering games. I love Oregon State. I'm not sure they can put it together for the full part of the schedule. They host everybody in Corvallis. I don't know what's keeping me back from hitting the over. I just believe that a defense that cannot defend their run game is Oregon, and I'm going to take full advantage of it by taking a Beavers game of the year line.
By the way, 2 random things. Braxton Burmeister is signed with the Rams, and he's converting to a wide receiver, which is the weirdest thing ever. I did not expect that.
He took reps at San Diego State. He took reps at San Diego State, a wide receiver.
Yeah, but I didn't think he was going to be on an NFL roster as a wide receiver. I doubt it. We'll see if he makes it. And Oregon State plays UC Davis in week 2 at home, and UC Davis is in the same conference as Montana State. Montana State is in Bozeman. I was in Bozeman. It's the weirdest string, but I was in Bozeman a couple weeks ago.
You have the cloudy mist? Yeah.
I love the city, but there's a breakfast place there called Jam. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. One of the best breakfast places I've ever been to. So if you're ever in Bozeman, the lovely town of Bozeman where Montana State is located, check out Jam. And it is tons of all throughout Montana and goddamn, what the hell, Huckleberry. You'll find Huckleberry Jam all over in Montana, Wyoming, and it's really good. But yeah, check out that breakfast place.
Is there any Stuckey's gas stations?
My wife has like went to one, like a Stuckey's bar. People will tweet me. I've never seen one in person. Somehow I've never come across one, but I get pictures of them all the time. My wife's been to one. They're like famous for for pecans, however anyone pronounces it. Nevada, pecan, right? Like they're famous for like pecan bars or something. I don't know. Right. Anyway, back to the Oregon State. I'm taking the future. You're not, but you want to make a case for UCLA.
Oh, I love UCLA. Absolutely. And I had a lot of questions heading in before I talked to Chip Kelly. They were 10th in the portal rankings, so that means there's a lot of new faces.
Where did you talk to Chip Kelly?
I talked to Chip Kelly at Media Days in case anybody didn't know.
Ding. Over 8.5, minus 120, by the way, just to set you up. Yep. Quarterback battle. DTR is gone. And there is a quarterback battle. It looked like Colin Schlee from Kent State was originally going to be in there, but it looks like it's just going to come down to the stud freshman more, and then Garbers, who I think has the lead right now.
Yeah.
They avoid Oregon and Washington on the schedule. They should go 6-0 at home, but it is a pretty brutal road slate. They got Utah, Oregon State, and USC on the road. You also have a weird game at San Diego State in week 2. One of my, I love all these games this year, like of the Power 5 teams going on the road. Like Alabama going to USF, hilarious game. But biggest question, like who wins the quarterback battle? Like Garber's more solid, more like the upside of Moore. Holy shit. We'll see if he wins it. And then new defensive coordinator, his impact, the transfers there. There is partly a significant rebuild on the offensive side. But what do you see with the Bruins?
Yeah, the offensive side, there's a lot of new names in places, which is why you're going to find UCLA priced at what they are, is because people just don't recognize Dante Moore, or maybe they do know who Colin Schlee is from Kent State and just don't believe that he can produce. Maybe they don't know who Carson Steele is. Chip Kelly told me that UCLA, the players and the staff know Maction better than any other team in college football because they watch them from the facility on Tuesday and Wednesday nights. And when I believe Chip Kelly's quote was, when Crocky J hit the transfer portal, I immediately took a flight to Muncie, Indiana. He wanted Carson Steele pretty bad, and they got him through the portal. The guy is an absolute bowling ball, going to run over everybody with blonde flowing hair. He's perfect for Hollywood, considering he's got a pet alligator and everything. I have faith with this quarterback stable of Garber, Schlee, and Dante Moore. I'm really not worried at all. Ryan Gunderson came in as the quarterback coach a couple of years ago. We were hot on here on the podcast 2 years ago, and I said the DTR's numbers would massively improve. They did. I'm not worried about it. You got Ryan Gunderson on staff. I'm good with the offensive side of the ball. They're going to be able to move people around. They have the best center in the conference in Duke Clemens. He's returning for a 5th season. He's going to anchor that offensive line that returns 66% of snaps. So I'm not expecting a drop off. You would think losing DTR, you would. This tight end room has more depth than it's had in the last couple of years. UCLA loves to put 9 guys on the line of scrimmage in the box and just plow over you. So I'm not really worried about this offense whatsoever. Go to the defensive side of the ball. A lot of transfers coming in. The Murphy brothers are still there. They can run edge. Linebacker is loaded with recruits that they had come in through the portal. Really highly, high prospect recruits that came in. And so I don't expect a drop off. And then there was the whole Bill McGovern, their defensive coordinator passed away, RIP. Chip Kelly was able to go to the Ravens staff and pull Danton Lynn.
Like the hire, yeah. Although he's never called plays, but I do like the hire.
He's never called plays, but the correlation we can make here is that Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter have been able to swap in and out of the Ravens staff into Michigan and made Michigan's defense college football playoff worthy, and they never were before. And I'm not going to believe that it's the Michigan players because they got burned so many times by Ohio State. It was scheme. And so if you're pulling 2 guys separately off the Ravens staff, and they did that to the Michigan defense, I have no issues with this Danton Lynn hire from the Ravens whatsoever. I expect what happened to Michigan the last couple of years with Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter. I think that is going to be what's going to happen here. So I see a ton of positives. I see big names that have filled up the portal on the defensive side of the ball. When Dante Moore finally gets his feet under him, he's got a great quarterbacks coach. UCLA is going to rumble in this Pac-12 here. And you know what? And no one's talking about it.
Yeah, well, why I wanted to group those 2 teams together. I mean, we just talked 2 seconds before we started recording this. We don't share any notes ahead of time. I said, what is your future long shot? And you said UCLA. And then I said Oregon State. Like both have some questions on defense. We like their coordinators. I like coordinator. You like the coordinator hire. I agree there. But they also have quarterback upside, which is what you want when you're looking for a future in this range, right? Like Moore has so much talent. If he ends up being the guy, the upside there, if he hits, is extreme, which is what you're looking for with that variance in the future. So good stuff there. Let's go to the 6 teams at the bottom of the conference, all priced 30-1 or greater to win the Pac-12. We'll start with Washington. Yeah, about to get very hairy. We'll get the Dion eventually. We'll start with Washington State, 30-1, over 6 minus 115. I have a lot of questions with this team. Leaning under for what it's worth. Haven't pulled the trigger yet. Curious to get your thoughts. They do have 2 new coordinators for the second straight year. It's a little worrying. I do like where they're going with the offense. They brought in a guy from Western Kentucky. They're gonna bring the air raid back, right?
Do you know his age? Do you know his
At the age of the offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say 30. Am I wrong? I'm gonna say.
Just throw a number out. I'll tell you.
Well, I'm trying to decipher now while you were asking me this. He must be younger than I thought because you're asking me. So I was gonna say 33, but I'm gonna say now he's got to be low. I know he's young, 29.
Yeah. Well, Kenny Dillingham was standing.
Younger?
Yeah. Kenny Dillingham was standing in front of me, and he's 33 years old. And I thought, man, this is the youngest coach I think in FBS. And then I'm coming to find out, Ben Arbuckle, the new offensive
Arbuckle, yeah.
Washington State, is 27 years old.
27?
27 years old.
Wow.
Born the year I graduated high school.
That's amazing.
All right, let's get back to Washington State.
I feel so old now. But yeah, you're gonna get the air raid back. And in Pullman, you're gonna have more. This is gonna be an offense that just takes a lot more deep shots. You're gonna get the tight end more involved. Cam Ward is back at quarterback. You have Watson back at running back. You got a brand new wide receiver room, 4 or 5 back on the offensive line, but you have to replace your left tackle. I do have a lot of questions on defense, which is what I'm really worried about. So it's a new offensive scheme. I think it'll be a fit for Cam Ward, and I like it. There might be some growing pains, which you could see week 1 at Colorado State. More on that later. But you have 2 really good edge rushers in Stone and Jackson, but you lose your top 3 defensive tackles. You lose a ton at linebacker, right? Henley goes to the NFL. You lose others to the portal. Major questions at one of the corner spots. So, yeah, I mean, and also you did lose your top 4 wide receivers, but the good thing is that USC and Utah get replaced by Colorado and UCLA. The non-conference got Wisconsin at home, Wisconsin revenge spot at Colorado State could be tricky. They're 2 touchdown favorites, and then you get Northern Colorado at home. You're at Oregon, at Washington, but you also get, Cal, Colorado, Stanford, Arizona State, Arizona at home. There's a lot of winnable games here. I just don't see them getting the 7 wins. I show a little bit of value on the under. A lot of questions about the D. There might be some growing pains on offense. What are your thoughts on the Cougs?
Yeah, the Cougs I projected 6.5, which is right where the market is at 6.5. You can get a plus 140 on that on the over. But I have serious issues, a lot of issues that are on the offensive side of the ball. Not that I don't believe in Ben Arbuckle and his really short time as a Houston Baptist QC, quality control coach, and then having a couple of years at Western Kentucky, knowing the Zach Kitley system.
Also the 4th offensive coordinator in 3 years, which is crazy.
And this
teams going back changes. It's crazy in Washington.
Yeah, and I think the problem with that also is that Cam Ward must be in his 3rd or 4th offensive system after coming from Incarnate Word. So it is a lot to grasp. Plus, this team, forget coordinators being new on both sides of the ball. Cam Ward loses his top 4 targets. I don't think he knows who he's going to be throwing to when we start the season off. Now, Cam Ward is very capable of producing video game numbers, both on the ground and through the air. I mean, I think he generated more than 7 yards per scramble attempt. All he has to do is leave the pocket and it's a first down. The problem with this kid, because man, did I love him coming in last year. This team finished 119th in havoc allowed. I mean, it's like a turnover waiting to happen at any second. As much as I love watching Cam Ward, as exciting as he is, until there is the ability to protect the football and maybe take a sack instead of throwing an INT, I'm not putting any money behind this team. And you know what? They're going to struggle at the beginning of the season with all this change. So complete pass on Washington State for me.
Yeah, I think
Colorado State. Oof. I love them. Can't get enough of it.
Yep. Colorado State week 1, mentioned that later as well. Let's move on to Arizona. Arizona went 5-7 last year, showed some improvement under Jed Fish. This will be the 2nd year for him, 2nd year in a new system for quarterback Jaden DeLora. I think he could make another jump. And the Wildcats looking for their first bowl bid since 2017. Their win total over 5 plus 115. You're basically betting, if you like the over, on will they get to bowl eligibility. Pac-12, 80-1 at BetMGM. The over turns a ton, although they did lose one of their best receivers to USC. The offensive line's their biggest question. They'll be inexperienced and young at left guard and right tackle. Also have their left tackles returning from injury, but it's a fairly experienced unit. As I mentioned, Singer, their wide receiver, went to USC, but I still like their skill position players. The defense is the biggest question, but the defense was awful last year. Like, how much worse can it get? I actually like what they did in the offseason. Like, they only have 36 starts returning on day, but they went and really hit the transfer portal. I think they're bigger, they're more physical. I like what they did in the portal. And yes, you use a lot of production, but sometimes that's a good thing on defenses that really struggled. So I actually think their D, which will be overhauled in their 4-2-5, brand new defensive line, will actually be better, even with that. Like I said, their top 5 tacklers are gone. Delora in the second year of the system should reduce his turnovers. They also should have some positive regression in the red zone. Mentioned that in the ACC episode, like Wake Forest should have some negative regression in the red zone. I think it might be the opposite with Arizona. The problem is that the schedule, because I wanted to buy, I like what Arizona is building, and they could start off 3-1. I mean, at Mississippi State is an impossible game, but they should start off 3-1, and then they host Washington. But on the schedule, they do miss Oregon, but they also miss Cal. All of their easiest league games are on the road. Like that is what I hate. So, and they only have 4 Pac-12 home games, and they're all versus the upper half of the league right there. So you're hosting Washington, Oregon State, UCLA, and Utah later in the year. And, you're going to Washington State. You're going to Stanford. You're going to Colorado. You're also going to USC, which you'll probably lose. Then you're going to Arizona State in the finale. So, yeah, those are like easier opponents, but I would rather have some easy opponents at home just to feel more comfortable. So there's a more wide range of outcomes here. So I wanted to buy Arizona. They're my only team. I've leaned them and Washington overs, but not enough to pull the trigger as of right now. What are your thoughts on the Wildcats?
There's a lot, not just going on the field, but there is increasingly more going on off the field with this team. So on the field, it's an exciting combination of Jaden Delora, 29 big time throws to 24 turnover worthy plays last year. He was pressured on 32% of dropbacks. That is a lot. But he has Jacob Cowing, transferred in from UTEP last year. He averaged 2.8 yards per route run. That's a bomb. I mean, Jacob Cowing is such a huge weapon in Pac-12 play. Offensive line is going to bring back 62%. But first off, Arizona's got to the offensive line has to learn how to protect Jaden Delora. They were 75th in pass blocking. And second off, they have to improve from a finishing drives aspect of being 70th in the nation last year. They can move the ball up and down the field, top 25 in success rate. They can get first downs all day, but getting points up on the board has been an issue. Now, Jed Fish is a great head coach. I mean, even when I heard him talk, I was like, wow, this guy is bound to end up in the SEC or Big Ten somewhere. I mean, he's just got the personality, but there's so much going on off the field. And I'm not going to get into the incident that happened off the field with Jaden Delora when he was 17 years old, but all of that came out and was public, I believe in may have been March. What happened to him when he was 17 is horrific. And Jed Fish said that I'm not going to talk about it. I can't publicly comment on it. It's all legally sealed. It's never going to be reviewed. It's never going to be discussed, but it's behind us. Jaden Delora comes out to the crowd at Pac-12 Media Days and cried for 10 minutes apologizing. And if you want a gambling take, because I'm not going to give any sort of like social take on it, I never would. There's a lot on this team. There's a lot going on off the field with their quarterback and the baggage that he is carrying into this season, because it all finally came to a head and there was finally a settlement. And now it's the topic of every conversation. And you could tell by Jaden Delora's reaction how much this has taken a toll on him. He can't get protected by his offensive line. I don't want anything to do with this team. I think the program is heading in the right direction. I think Jed Fish is a great coach and he's going to get them to continue heading in the right direction. But if Jaden Delora is the quarterback, there's too many turnover-worthy plays still happening, and he is being pressured too much. And this team has not proved that they can put points up on the board when they get past the 40-yard line. So it would be an under if I played them, but I'm definitely not playing the over on these guys.
Yeah, a lot of distractions, as you mentioned. Let's stay in the same state and talk Arizona State. And their win total, what is the Arizona State nickname? I think it's the Grand Canyon State. Let me look that up. Yeah, Grand Canyon State. Yeah, Grand Canyon State, or also the Copper State. Must be some good copper mines there, which makes sense. By the way, another thing on my trip out west, I went to Jackson Hole, which is a ridiculously expensive place. Jackson Hole Airport, the nicest airport I've ever been in. And fun fact, the only airport in the world that's inside a national park. Anyway, that's my second random West Coast.
I think it's number one of the places to retire. It's like number one on the list of places to retire is Jackson Hole.
Beautiful place. Grand Tetons are awesome. But let's say in the same state, Arizona State. We mentioned Kenny Dillingham earlier, Oregon offensive coordinator, now goes to Arizona State. Brand new staff here, also brand new quarterback. Still a battle, I believe. Drew Pine, the Notre Dame transfer, and then the backup we'll get from last year. I think the skill possessions are going to be more than fine, but it's going to come down to quarterback. And, you have new schemes. You got a new offensive coordinator from Cal Poly, a new defensive coordinator, Brian Ward from Washington State. This is a complete overhaul. I mean, there's 43 new players, more scholarship newcomers than returnees. You got a new head coach, new quarterback, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. A lot of change here. So the offense, I think, might be a mess early. For what it's worth, they're 100 to 1 to win the Pac-12. Win total over 4.5 minus 155. Secondary is the most, I think, experienced unit on the team. Got some bolstered by the transfer portal as well. From a schedule perspective, 8 home games. That jumps right off the page. That includes opening with 4 straight. You get Southern, Utah, Oklahoma State, Fresno, and then USC in the conference opener. Weird things happen down there in Tempe, and they got 8 home games. Do have a very tough second half of the year. The teams left off their schedule from the Pac-12 are Oregon State and Stanford. You have Colorado, Washington State, Arizona, 3 winnable league games at home. You also have Southern Utah at home to start the year. So then can you win those games, pick off another, then you're over 4.5. What are your thoughts on Arizona State?
A lot of negativity out there from, I'd say, people I respect, the circles that I respect in the gambling community. There's a lot of negativity around Dillingham and taking this position and the coordinator hires, although, and we could discuss that, but, the roster is in such transition and such flux. This team finished 19th in the portal ranking. And Dillingham comes in as one of the youngest head coaches in FBS, goes and hires Bo Baldwin as his offensive coordinator. And Dillingham was very adamant and saying, I'm not touching the offense at all. This is not my offense. This is all Bo Baldwin. If you want to know what Bo Baldwin is, Eastern Washington used to put 70 up on the board every week. And those offenses a couple of years ago that were doing that belonged to Bo Baldwin. He can absolutely call offense. It is 100% his. Dillingham is not going to have anything to do with it. Not going to touch a headset, not going to touch the game plan, not going to get in on third downs. So any of these correlations we try to make from Oregon, Kenny Dillingham is not going to be a part of that. Plus, there's no Bo Nix. I understand the negativity around Drew Pine. He didn't prove anything while he was at Notre Dame. The rest of this quarterback staff is completely unproven. It's kind of a collection of meh, and I get that. But there are 2 areas where Arizona State kind of separates themselves from the bottom of the pack in the Pac-12. One is, this is one of the easiest schedules out there. From a Pac-12 perspective, it's not that bad. It's an easier schedule than, say, Colorado or Cal, if you're going in comparison. And then the other part is their transfers that they got through the portal are proven. They have a top 20 transfer portal class. Some of the other programs don't really have that. This is an extremely low win total. It is not hard to get to 4 wins on this schedule. Southern Utah, Oklahoma State's coming out. What's the heat going to be in Tempe when that game happens? I have a lot of questions about Oklahoma State. Fresno State, same situation, a lot of new offense at Fresno State. That is the whole thing about Arizona State's beginning of their schedule. Their first 3 games are against offenses that are completely going under changes, Southern Utah included. So this is going to be easy to get over 4.5. I like over 4.5 wins here. I project them at 5.
Yeah, new defensive coordinator Brian Ward from Washington State expect a lot of 5 defensive back sets, aggressive nickel, and that's they can run that because they have a really strong secondary. That's the strength of the team, which really helps in the Pac-12. And a lot of 2 linebacker sets. You bring Brown in at linebacker from Pullman, so you get a defensive end back from injury. I love Torrance. So yeah, I think that the defense might be better than some expect. And 8 home games in Tempe, that's important. So it looks like it's over nothing for sure. I would agree there. Let's talk about a team that we agree on an under, and that is the Cal Bears. Cal 66-1 to win the Pac-12. Total at BetMGM over 5.5 plus 120. Your boy, Spavital, Jake Spavital comes in and takes over as the offensive coordinator. Big change. Air raid up tempo for this offense.
Big
Looks
change.
like the quarterback will be Sam Jackson, a dual threat from TCU. You got Ott in the backfield that returns, but the rest is a mess on offense, and this offense could struggle once again. There's also questions on defense. Maybe you get Brett Johnson back and healthy, and he returns to form. They secondary will depend on a lot of transfer additions, but this team's a mess. They also don't have Colorado or Arizona on the schedule. Brutal road league schedule. They play at Washington, at Utah, at Oregon, at Stanford, and at UCLA. Oh, by the way, they also play USC and Oregon State at home. They also play Auburn at home. First ever meeting with an SEC team. Polar opposite, the most polar opposite schools and cultures and political views and tailgates you could ever imagine, Auburn and Cal. And they're the only team in the Pac-12 that plays the top 6 projected teams in the league. Plus, they only have 4 home games. I think Wilcox is a lame duck. This is his last year. I can't see this team getting to 6 wins. It's under for me. Agree?
This is an absolute under for me. There's a lot of things that I have Jake Spavital coming in, didn't work out as Texas State head coach. He's got
Who was your boy at Texas State that won for that 1-2 week stretch? Vitt. Remember Vitt?
Yeah.
Was that his name? Yeah. Tyler Vitt. Yeah.
Yeah. Boy, it was fun.
That was one of your favorite. We all had some hilariously wrong takes, but your Texas State take that year was great. I actually then had them. I was romanticizing them like a year or two later. Jeez.
If I remember right, there was a 35.5 point spread against Texas A&M in the opener, and some guy caught a pass on his butt in the end zone to cover that 35, and it landed on 35. So
I had 34.5, so it was even worse. And they went for 2 or missed the extra point or something. Yeah, we'll get to Texas State eventually.
Spavital is here running offense. He's got to improve an offense that was outside the top 100 success rate. They were in the bottom half of FBS when it comes to havoc allowed. Now you got Sam Jackson coming in to play quarterback. King Daru transfers in. They were 17th in the portal ranking, so they do have some names coming in, but they've never been able to nationally recruit to this program whatsoever. I didn't know what to do with these guys, considering, Spavital coming in. I did like Peter Sirmon when they hired him as defensive coordinator, but they went 128th in defensive success rate, 125th in havoc. They generated nothing last year. Now they get 69% of the defense back. I don't see this improving at all for them whatsoever. The schedule is brutal, but what really put the nail in the coffin is that an unnamed coach told me that there is a reason.
Where did the unnamed coach tell you this?
At Pac-12 Media Days.
Ding, ding,
there
ding.
is a reason Sam Jackson was extremely limited in his play for TCU. Now think about it. So Sam Jackson's coming in at quarterback. He was 3rd string, depends on where you put Chandler Morris last year at TCU. And there were a lot of games where TCU was up by more than 4 scores, and you just didn't see a lot of action out of Sam Jackson. I mean, we finally saw him in the opener against Colorado, but think about it. Of all the big leads they had, you never really saw him come in and take any snaps. And the word on the street that I guess is finally starting to get around is that Sam Jackson is not ready for this starting quarterback position whatsoever. From learning the playbook, from a grasp of the offense, taking a snap and knowing which way to turn. The kid's electric. No one disagrees. Just go watch film of things that he did for the Horned Frogs. But his grasp of Spavital's offense is a huge, huge issue right now. And it's going to be when they start camp. Under 5, no issues playing it. This team is not getting to 6 with the schedule.
Agreed. Let's move to another team that should be a mess with a brand new head coach and Troy Taylor, the offensive coordinator, who's tasked basically with fixing this offense. Talking about the Stanford Cardinal, 250 to 1 to win the Pac-12. My, how they have fallen off the face of the earth. Win total over 2.5, minus 130. Mind you, they play at Hawaii to start the year, and they're 10-point favorites. And they have Sacramento State at home. Those are 2 of their first 3 games. And their win total's 2.5. I wanted to bet the under. I don't think I can get there. But maybe you can get to get there. This team's just a mess. I mean, they have 6 returning starters total. They have new schemes on both sides of the ball. They're 131st in experience. They also they're limited in what they can do in the portal as of right now. They basically lose everything in the secondary. They have 15 career offensive line starts returning. They're going to lean on their tight end, and they have an FIU transfer who I like. I mean, there is not a quarterback battle between 3 guys here. They avoid Utah and Arizona State. They technically have like 5 winnable games in the schedule, but I can't go under because this team's going to be a mess. I mean, they have the least Power 5 returning production too. Like, because you look at Hawaii, they're obviously going to be like 10-point favorites, even though I like Hawaii. Hawaii could easily win that game. Sac State at home, Arizona at home, at Colorado, and then Cal at home. And we don't like Cal. So, like, this team stinks. They're a mess, but I can't go under 2.5. What are your thoughts?
First off, I love Troy Taylor. And
Sac State boy.
Yeah, he was probably one of the nicest people I've met in my travels.
Where at?
I was at Pac-12 Media Day.
Oh,
I would venture to say that the team will be 100% prepared and probably at a bargain value against Sacramento State, Troy Taylor's old team. He's going to know how to prep for those kids. He ran them through the FCS playoffs. He has a really nice offense that he had. We have backed the Bees on our podcast multiple times. We were backing Troy Taylor. He's going to be excellent for Stanford in time, but you can't take what Sacramento State did at the FCS level and the offensive schemes they ran and bring it to David Shaw's old offense with the size of their offensive linemen that he recruited, with the tight ends that are, in line versus out in the slot. There's just a lot of differences between those 2 offenses, and you're not going to be able to pull this off overnight. The problem with the win total also is that the very first win total that I hit was Stanford under 3 back in April or May. That's 2.5. That's a big difference. Yeah. They should beat Sacramento State. He knows everything about them. That's a win, right? There's 1. Where's your other 2? Hawaii, Colorado, doable, completely doable. So I can't tell everybody to go hit under 2.5, although
could easily beat Cal at home too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not going to give anybody a ringing endorsement to go take an over on the team. I do like Troy Taylor. It's going to come. I would say rather wait for an underdog spot and take them as an underdog.
You're gonna bet Stanford week 2 at USC?
No, but I'm going to bet him against
Sacramento
State. I mean, think about it, right? If Hawaii,
you're going to bet him as an underdog role, and then you're not going to bet him against USC. You can bet him against Sac State. Just conflicted everything you just said.
You're going to get a good number. Hawaii,
they can get in the back door against USC.
If Timmy Chang shows the pulse and Hawaii wins, and then USC wins by 42 or 49, you're going to get a hell of a number against Sacramento State.
Yes, agreed. And I think Hawaii is going to beat Stanford in week 1. For what it's worth. All right, let's move on to the team and save the best for last. The team that everyone wants to know what everyone's takes are on. The Colorado Buffaloes. Neon Deion is in Boulder. a complete overhaul. I mean, what did they bring in? 40 transfers, 20 freshmen. They also lost about the same amount to the portal. This is a team that was a disaster last year. They went 1-11. Just everything went wrong. Everything was bad across the board. This is a brand new team, though. Like I could be like, there was some regression here. It's just a brand new team. They bring in lots of transfers. They lose a lot of guys. His son is going to take over at quarterback. There's some skill position talent. I am worried about what's that?
300 to 1 on the Heisman if you want to grab his son.
Yeah, 300 to 1 on the Heisman. All but 3 offensive starters are brand new. The offensive line, major questions. The defense, obviously major questions. They do have like 2 5-star kids at cornerback, but not sure that they're ready to dominate yet. Like what Deion did, I like the hire for Colorado. And yes, I think that compared to where they were going, he has a shot, over time to get this program back to relevancy, but it's not going to happen this year. For what it's worth, Pac-12 100 to 1 at BetMGM. Might as well just take a $100 bill and light it on fire if you wanted to bet it. Win total over 3.5 plus 120. I like the coordinator hires. I'll tell you that. With Sean Lewis, I'm a big fan of, but there's so many issues with this team. What does Sean Lewis want to do? Flash fast, wants to play as fast as possible. What's a bad thing that you could do when you're undermanned and outgunned? Is try to play as fast as possible. You kind of want to reduce the number of possessions. So,
Yep.
What Deion did at Jackson State was amazing, but he was getting the guy can recruit, can build relationships. He was getting like FBS kids to come play an FCS team. That's not the case here, right? And this program was in such a mess that it's not going to be a quick turnaround. So, but there's a ton of uncertainty. There's like, how are all these pieces going to fit together? It's definitely a more talented team on the surface. I do have questions about the depth across the board. The teams that they don't play, Washington and Cal. Another problem is, the schedule's hard, as it has been for Colorado for years. 2 of their easiest opponents on the schedule, Colorado State at home and Stanford at home. Both those teams are coming off of a bye. That doesn't do them any favors. They start at TCU, the 3-touchdown underdogs, and they're Nebraska at home, Colorado State at home, and then it's just like at Oregon, USC. They do have Stanford at home, so like you're over 3.5. Like here's your path. It's like, can you upset Nebraska week 2? Sure. Can you beat Colorado State week 3? Yeah. And then you're gonna have to you beat Stanford, and then you pick off Arizona, especially if they're a mess. There's your 4 wins. But this number's come down. Under 3.5 is juice. I still lean that way. Don't love it as much as I did, especially with all the uncertainty around this roster. But this is a team that's probably going to finish 3-9, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on Colorado and Deion?
Well, being flashy like this comes with a price. And I'm glad Coach Prime is in FBS. I'm glad he's at Colorado. I'm kind of glad that Colorado is going to the Big 12 because you're going to put Commissioner Brett Yormark with Coach Prime. That's going to be some fireworks. Get your seats now for Big 12 Media Days next year. I think when you're this flashy and you have this much change in your roster and you just exude confidence like this, you're going to piss off other coaches.
You're hunted. You're hunted by every team now. When you should be the hunter as a team that was just 1-11, losing every game by 60.
I talked to 11 of the 12 coaches on this schedule.
Where at?
And at multiple media days. So if you look at the schedule, at multiple. One coach off the record said it's circled and we want to kick his ass. And he wasn't the only one that had those sentiments. So your flashiness and what you've done through the portal and breaking college football, you've pissed a lot of people off. And listen, this is probably year 0. It's probably never going to be this bad for Deion ever again. He just doesn't have
complete and utter overhaul. Complete.
And you're right. When you made that Sean Lewis comparison, because at Kent State, right, flash fast, we want to be the fastest in the nation. But you don't have anything on the defensive side of the ball to get any stops. Who was the team last year that had that exact same problem? Oklahoma. it was a dumpster fire, right? You can't go that fast when that's what you have on defense. You have to limit possessions. So yes, this is going to be a dumpster fire. And the offenses that I'm looking at on the schedule that have the ability to kick their ass are going to kick their ass. And it's not going to be pretty. You're going to see a couple of head coaches in the fourth quarter up by 40, still trying to score. Billy Napier style, right? Billy Napier has killed a few of my unders because he's running tempo with 2 minutes left in the game. I think we're going to see some of that on this schedule this year. So I'm glad you're here, Dion. But, you know, this is FBS and you've wrinkled some feathers here and you're going to have to pay for it. There's 2 Kent State offensive linemen on the offensive line here.
Yeah,
that's not going to cut it.
That's tough. Macro lineman in the Power 5.
So am I suggesting play an under? No, I'm not, because Stuck, you laid out the path of where they can get some wins. Here is where we usually play these teams. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of X factors. There's a lot of, I don't have any chemistry with my teammates. I don't have any chemistry with my coach. By the time November rolls around and I see Arizona and Washington State on this schedule, those are 2 games where I think Colorado's stock will be their lowest and will be a chance for them to come up and grab a win. So I'm putting Colorado on pause, but I will tell you TCU, Nebraska, Colorado State, Oregon, USC to start the first 5 games of the season. I can't see a scenario where I'm not playing an over. Now I'm holding back on week 1 because everybody's freaked out about this clock thing, right? And totals across the board are getting hit under. There's some services out there. They're going to release overs and at some point. So mark your calendars for about August 23rd-ish. And I think all the understeam on these first week 1 games, these week 0 games is going to come to a halt. And you're going to start to see some playback on the over. Colorado every week is going to be an overplay for me, at least from a team total over on the team that they're playing. That includes Nebraska, right? That includes teams I don't even know what offensive identity they're going to throw out there. But the problem is this defense is going to be horrific. And this offense is going to be lost. And some coaches are going to want to take it out on prime. And that's what you're going to see this year.
Nebraska team total over. That's a 2 against the Colorado defense. That means you must really like that angle. All right. With the way Nebraska wants to play this year. All right. Good stuff there. Covering all 12. I was a little rusty on the ACC. We missed Boston College, but then got them in the 3 and out. I think we got all 12 teams of the Pac-12. Before we do close up shop on this episode, let's go 3 and out. All right, as we'll do for all of our Power 5 betting preview episodes, and by the way, we will have 11 total college football betting conference preview episodes, 2 for the SEC. And then our group of 5 guys, Mike and Mike, will host the group of 5 group of 5 episodes, and either Colin or I will join for each of those. We will have Colin, on the episodes Colin and I do, we have the same format. First down, we'll talk a week 0, week 1 angle that we like of related to that league. Then second down, we will talk an over or future. And then third down, we will talk an under. So let's start with first down, week 1 angle. I think I already spoiled mine. Colorado State, 2 touchdowns or better at home against Washington State. Mentioned some of the reasons why I think Washington State might be a bit overvalued. And I think especially early on, you might see some growing pains on both sides of the ball. And I think Colorado State could be a bit more improved than the market implies here early on. We'll get to some of that in the Mountain West episode. And as we get closer to week 0 and week 1. So I'll go with the Rams. It's weird because you had like a new air raid last year with Colorado State. Now you're going to have like a new air raid this year. And then in the first game, I think Colorado State will benefit from that. Year 2, Washington State might have some growing pains early on. You're catching 2 touchdowns against a defense that has a lot of holes to fill from losses of last year. Colin, what are you looking at for week 0, week 1, Pac-12 related?
Norvell's got a lot of new pieces on offense. Go ahead and check the action app. I got a game of the year in there that involves the Pac-12 team. So go ahead and check that out. I had 2 in here. I already mentioned game of the year line. I'm taking Oregon State plus 7.5 in the Civil War against Oregon. Oregon State is going to dominate defensive front sevens that cannot stop the run. And that is a serious problem for Oregon. So I'm going to take the points now, a game that, I don't know, could be 3.5, 4, depends on how Oregon season goes. We'll see how injuries go by the time that gets around. If I had to do a week 1 line, I would tell everybody, I know it's not comfortable, But that Florida-Utah line right now, as we record, is at 8.5. I expect that thing to close about 6.5, 6 when that Cam Rising news comes down. It will dip below 7. And we're a month out, I think, from kick. So, that if you need a week 0, week 1 line, if you can handle it, if you can stomach it, take Florida. You can come back on Utah because it's going to dip below 7.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The market, from things that you said early on in this episode, and then you could also just see the market moving in that direction, and it will likely continue to do so. By the way, Colorado State, Torrey Horton, can't wait to watch him this year. All right, let's go second down, either an over or a future. I'm going to throw out the over. I didn't bet any overs in the Pac-12 yet. I trust DeBoer in that Washington offense. I think the defense will be improved. My numbers aren't quite there for me to bet it. But if I were to bet one over in the Pac-12, it would be Washington. But I'll throw out a future on Oregon State. And, you get 11-1, I think 12-1 you could find out there. We're going to have an elite offensive line. I don't think the defensive losses are as bad. They're going to take a step back on defense, but I don't think they're as bad as some are implying. And mainly, this is just a bet on two things. If DJU hits his upside, the talent is there, new change of scenery, new scheme. If he hits his upside with that schedule, all of their hardest games are at home at Reser, then there's going to be an opportunity for Oregon State to find its way to the Pac-12 championship game. So give me the Beavers. How about you? Over or future that you want to mention in the Pac-12?
Let's do a future. Let's do UCLA 16-1. There's 14-1 in the market. Go ahead and grab that too. The reason why the number is so inflated is because there's so much turnover going on at the skill positions. Quarterback Colin Schlee comes in from Kent State. Garbers is still there. And then Dante Moore, the freshman everything, the blue chip that, could be Caleb Williams-esque on the other side of town here, is going to be taking the reins in at some point. They absolutely reloaded at skill positions. They went and got Carson Steele, running back from the MAC. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they have really filled a ton of holes that they have. And their defensive coordinator, even though that he has passed away, they have dipped into the Ravens staff, the Baltimore Ravens staff, to pull Danton Lynn, who's going to be calling plays for the first time ever. But if there's a correlation to what Michigan has done with flicking coaches from the Ravens staff, this UCLA defense should be just fine. Back on the offensive side of the ball, we've never worried about UCLA offense when they've had Ryan Gunderson at the quarterback coach position. He massively improved DTR's game. I expect him to massively improve the quarterbacks that are going to be taking snaps under center this year. Give me a team that nobody's talking about, nobody's expecting. Everybody's really hot on USC and Washington, but UCLA is right there with them. I have them projected within one conference win of all the big boys here in this conference. So take them to win the Pac-12 championship.
Yeah, another team with a quarterback who, if he gets a shot and the upside hits, they're certainly going to be much better than expected. Which is something you're looking for when you take these semi-long shot futures preseason. All right, finally, one last task to get to, and that's third down. Your favorite under. I think we might agree here. I'm going under Cal. Offense should still be a mess under new offensive coordinator with a new quarterback. The defense could be okay, but the schedule is just brutal. They're the only team in the Pac-12 that plays all 6 of the top projected teams in the league. Throw in 2 more tough home games. Throw in a home game against Auburn as well. I just do not see this team getting to 6 wins. Under Cal. Colin?
Under for Cal for me. On the defensive side of the ball, Peter Sermon did not make any headway in improving a defense that finished 3rd to last in success rate, 6th to last in defensive havoc. They're going the opposite direction with a defensive-minded coach. On the offensive side, Cal is going to bring in Sam Jackson, which is exciting. But the problem is he doesn't know the offense. He's going to run Jake Spavital's offense that didn't work out so well at Texas State. This is a lot of questions here, a lot of inexperience. And this is not the year to have questions and be inexperienced in the Pac-12 because the rest of the offenses in this conference can absolutely hum. Under 5 for Cal.
Wouldn't even shock me if they lost at North Texas in week 1, and then you'd be sitting really pretty with that win total. All right, that'll do it for us. Really fun episode. It's just been a blast as always, Colin. It's good to be back. We will have many more college football betting preview episodes leading right up to week 0, which will be here before we know it. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks to our producers on the back end. Thanks, of course, once again to all of you. Make sure you subscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy, leave a review, 5-star review. They really help us out. We'll do a bunch of giveaways for anyone that leaves one throughout the preseason and regular season. So if you already left one, just grab someone else's phone, your girlfriend, boyfriend, or friend, or mom, whoever, leave a review. They really help us out, especially early in the season. It's time for us to keep on grinding, but that'll do it for this episode. We will catch y'all later. Cheers.
He's out.